Matthew McConaughey actually had some pretty good thoughts on this whole thing. I can't believe I would say that, because Matthew McConaughey has said some things recently politically that were just a little strange. He appears to be wanting to angle to run for office at some point. He's got this new book out, Green Lights, which, by the way, Speechless was a little higher on the charts than Green Lights for the past few days. I don't know now where it is. Maybe we've fallen behind again. But I've heard people are enjoying that book. McConaughey obviously has political ambitions, and he had a really important point on how to think about what's going on. The riots in the streets, burning down the country, the vitriol that's largely, almost exclusively, coming from the left, the politicization of every institution, the feeling that conservatives have lost so much power. We're arguing over Washington and Lincoln and Jefferson and the Star-Spangled Banner. McConaughey says the country is just going through puberty.
Happy birthday, America. Yes, indeed, as we celebrate our independence today, as we celebrate our birth as a nation, a day that kickstarted a revolution to gain our sovereignty. Let's admit that this last year's trip around the sun was also another head scratcher. But let's also remember that we are babies. You know, as a country, we're basically going through puberty in comparison to other countries' timelines. And we're going to go through growing pains. We are going through growing pains. This is not an excuse to say this. It's just a reality. And this is good because we got to keep learning. We got to keep maturing. We got to keep striving. We got to keep climbing. We got to keep building. And we got to make sure we maintain hope along the way as we continue to evolve. Why? Because it's who we are. Why? Because the alternative sucks.
Okay, so then he goes on, and it's kind of just platitudinous nonsense about progress and evolve, man, all right. But the first part is actually really smart. McConaughey's saying, this is a young country, and we're going through puberty, and that is certainly true. And conservatives sometimes get a little nostalgic, okay, and we cling to the past. As my friend Father George Rutler says, nostalgia is history after a few drinks. And as my dead friend, I think we would have been friends had I met him. I hope I meet him someday. Chesterton famously says, when you leave a white fence, just you leave it. You leave it out in the middle of nowhere, you go away. When you come back, it will not be a white fence any longer. There will be dirt, there will be bugs, there will be stuff all over it, because you don't leave it in stasis. You leave it in a torrent of change. The thing that is constant is change. There is no such thing as stasis in this world. And so when we pine for this time of 1776, we're pining for something that we can never go back to. None of us would actually want to go back then. No one actually wants to live outside of his own time, because our time has in some ways shaped us. And so we are suited for the time that we are in, uniquely suited for this time that we're in. And we need to do something with that. We are very, very young as a country. 250 years old, just about. So what is our narrative going to be? The narrative was not settled 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 100 years ago. It is still settling now. And the left understands this. The left understands the power of narrative. So they are trying to shape what the narrative of our country is in order to destroy the country. They're trying to say the country is essentially evil and everyone who made it is evil. And so we've got to just knock down their statues and clear it away so we can refound a country along our lines. We obviously have to push back against that, but we need to offer a different narrative. And it's not just going to say, keep the statues up. Yeah, we want to keep the statues up. But what are we offering? What is our substantive vision? It's the point I've hammered home for some time now. It's not enough just to argue about procedure. It's not enough just to argue about form and to say, for instance, I defend free speech in the abstract. No, you've got to have something to say. You've got to recognize there will be standards. There will be a narrative. There will be taboos. What are they going to be? What do we think is good? Are we willing to promote what we think is good? Are we willing to suppress what we think is bad? We have to. That's how culture works. It's inevitable, but we so far have not really had the courage to do it over the past 15, 20 years. And if you read dumb columns like this CRT one in the New York Times, then you're not going to have the courage to do it ever. Are we really willing to say this is true and suppress things that are false? I hope so. I think that's the only way that we're ever going to be able to fight back at all. I mean, we've uniformly, ceaselessly lost over the past 20 years that the left duped us into falling for their trap, and they're setting the narrative. Hey, hold up. I hope you liked that clip. If you did, we got a whole episode. America Goes Through Puberty. That's the title of the episode. I'm not just stating that, but it is true. Matthew McConaughey made a good point. Head on over, ring the bell, subscribe, check out the full episode. You can also get it on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, the Michael Knowles Show podcast, and you can also order my book, which hit #1 on all books on Amazon, thanks to wonderful readers like you. Speechless, Controlling Words, Controlling Minds. I'll see you next time.